Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's 1 million by 1 million online rendezvous. This is Sramana Mitra, CEO and founder of 1 million by 1 million, coming to you live from Menlo Park, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley. I know we have listeners in all different parts of the world, so whether it's good morning, evening, afternoon, night for you, greetings. And I hope you're all safe. Most of all, things are quite tricky in a lot of parts of the world right now, and very disturbing. So in this session, I'm going to spend time, doing Q&A. And we did recently a poll. You may have participated in the poll. We asked what kind of content, what kind of questions do you want us to cover here? And the response that we got overwhelmingly was people wanted to look at startup ideas. So the way I'm reading that or interpreting that poll feedback is that many of you are looking to start a new company and noodling ideas. And I will spend at least some portion of today's session discussing a couple of ideas that I have worked on and that I'm happy to share with you in case you want to work on those. So that would be part of today's session. Now, before we get going, I also want to address another question, which is that many of you want feedback on your projects. You're already working on a startup, you have either launched or are in the process of launching, pre-launch, but you're already working on something and you want my feedback on your project. I'm very happy to do that and I'm very available to do that. This is not the right forum for that. The session that you need to tap into for that is the 1M by 1M free mentoring roundtables. And those happen on Thursday mornings, 8 a.m. Pacific time. You should convert that into your time zone and dial in through WebEx. Go to the 1mby1m.com website and you can register to pitch or attend on the 1m1m website under free public roundtables. And Maureen will send you instructions on how to participate in those. 1M by 1M, as you know, is the first and only global virtual accelerator in the world. And this is what we do. We help entrepreneurs make progress, basically. That's the whole rationale of our program. All right, let's go to the first question. The first question is, do you have a K through 12 education startup idea for the post-COVID world? I've been thinking about this quite a lot, and I've come up with something that I'll share with you, and you can basically interpret it your way and see if you want to work on something like this. In the spring of 2020, parents of young children have suddenly woken up to a world where kids have to be homeschooled. They're supposedly guided by the teachers. These teachers have no experience of teaching online often, and are thus learners themselves of a new education paradigm. They're scrambling to make things flow without losing the limited attention of the youngsters that are already difficult to command in normal times. The key issue I observe is that the teaching tools are not designed for this usage model. The education world has made a shift in the last decade from a sage on stage model to a guide on side model. In the former, the teachers lectured to students in an auditorium format. That's the sage on stage model. In the latter, kids were assigned YouTube or Khan Academy video as homework, and they did exercises in class with the teacher assisting as needed. That is the guide and side model. Now we are making another giant paradigm shift in an accelerated pace. Kids are at home. Teachers are at home, parents are at home. The learning is happening at home, and the teacher is a virtual presence. As in most paradigm shifts, the best way to consider them is by looking at the opportunities they present. Throughout the COVID quarantine, I have preserved a daily routine of studying French on Duolingo. There's much that I've observed in their approach that can be applied to other types of subjects at various levels. For K through 12, the most interesting of this is gamification. Children tend to hang out in groups. One of the key success factors of K through 12 gamification could be to tap into this natural tendency and turn these organic affinities into study groups with built-in gamification. Let us think through a use case. Say a group of 6 kids are fast friends in a particular class. The most natural study group to form would be to let this group come together. In Algebra 1, the strongest of the group is tasked with tutoring the weakest, and the other 4 average ones simply collaborate. In a class of 30, there could be 5 such groups competing with one another in a tournament style. Math tournaments have been known to be great fun. What if there's an app that is equipped to provide all of the above functionalities? Peer tutoring, peer collaboration, team preparation, and class tournament. The other opportunity in this new paradigm is to make parents a part of the learning process and give them tools with which to engage. Of course, this needs to take into account that parents come from various backgrounds and educational levels. Again, let us think through a use case. Continuing with the same example, what if the parents of the kids were part of the process of getting these teams ready to compete? What can they do to help the kids practice and improve? I'm sure that tremendous amounts of creativity can be injected into building playful models of collaboration and competition that makes learning fun and engaging for these kids. Some of these models have already been explored. Others would need to be. In summary, remote learning and teacher-assisted homeschooling would need to become part of routine K-12 pedagogy going forward. The pandemic will end one day, but some of these paradigms may last if the experiments become successful. I am particularly keen to see the impact of engineering organic friendships into study groups. Similarly, I'm keen to see what deliberate parent involvement does to learning outcomes. Beyond the product design, we also need to consider the go-to-market strategy for such products. Today, it is generally understood amongst edtech investors that the best kind of businesses are those that find viral adoption via online teacher communities. Teachers are highly engaged, influential members of the K-12 ecosystem. They drive adoption of new technologies decisively. They make parents and schools pay for new technology. They exchange notes with other teachers and are highly influential viral spreaders of new products. So rather than selling school by school, the most successful products find their champions in communities of teachers. What about the numbers? Let us say an Algebra 1 app led by teachers in charge finds adoption in 1,000 classrooms of 30 students each. That's 30,000 units, say at $10 per install. If the product succeeds, these 1,000 teachers would virally get it to 10,000. This puts the revenue at $3 million from the app. Once a product takes hold in a classroom, it would likely be used year after year after year. There are about 3 million students per year who are in the target market. So the TAM for the app is 30 million annual recurring revenue. Now, once the paradigm has been established as successful, all other relevant math subjects would fit into the same framework. With 10 such apps, we're looking at a TAM of 300 million. With 100 such apps that go beyond math and traverse middle school and high school, we're looking at a $3 billion TAM for the US alone. Thus, this is a unicorn idea that can attract venture capital. However, you need to establish with one app the validity and success of the methodology. And before you can raise serious money, you need to show the teacher that teachers are willing to get behind it. So some level of bootstrapping would be required before you can raise financing. Nonetheless, in the post-COVID world, a new learning paradigm needs to emerge. If you can come up with such a paradigm, you can build a kick-ass edtech company for the post-COVID world. If you want to work on this idea and you're looking for mentoring, come to 1 million by 1 million and we will help you. So think about it. If edtech is what you want to work on, this is a powerful idea that is worth working on, I think. Let me take a sip of water. We'll do another one. Do you have a healthcare startup idea for the post-COVID world? Yes, I do. And it's focused on home-based healthcare. So we'll go through a similar exercise of taking an idea, one of my ideas, and I will explain the idea. I will give you the go-to-market strategy, the numbers and everything. And then you can decide, if you decide to work on this idea, you interpret it your way. And if you want mentoring, you can come to 1 million by 1 million, we'll help you. Certain sectors of the industry are facing extraordinary levels of job loss in the post-COVID era. While some of these jobs may come back, it is widely believed that some trends are permanent. The retail sector faces one of the greatest shifts. The move to online shopping seems irreversible. Retail stores and malls are rapidly closing down. Service sector jobs in retail and hospitality face a grim future. There is, however, a solution. Service sector employees can be retrained as healthcare professionals. Let me share some data from the Population Reference Bureau. The aging of the baby boom generation could fuel a 75% increase in the number of Americans aged 65 and older requiring nursing home care to about 2.3 million in 2030 from 1.3 million in 2010. The Population Reference Bureau projects in a new report. The report notes that the number of Americans aged 65 and older is on course to more than double from 46 million in 2016 to over 98 million in 2060. While the 65 and older age group's share of the total population will rise to nearly 24% from 15%. Staggering numbers. There are two segments of opportunities within this sector: home-based healthcare for the affluent elderly and nursing home-based healthcare. The latter is a poorly paid industry that faces tremendous difficulty attracting trained personnel. The former, however, is an interesting opportunity to implement a certain social engineering capable of delivering win-win value for both the elderly and their caregivers. There are many affluent elderly people who live in sizable houses where a live-in caregiver can comfortably move in. In fact, in many cases, An entire family can move into a household where the owners are no longer capable of taking care of themselves or their properties. Often, such homeowners are lonely. As mobility gets constrained, they seek company and care at home. Why not create a startup that trains caregivers as well as places them into compatible situations? Training needs to be in a variety of specialized disciplines from dementia-related care, cancer care, and other types of illnesses that require specific administration. Basic general geriatric care is also an option where otherwise healthy people simply need help and company in daily life. The caregivers have different needs as well. Some are solo, some are couples, some are families with kids, some want to work just during the day, some at night, so on. Matchmaking needs to happen. A 76-year-old widower may want a family taking care of him in exchange of housing and wages, not only fulfilling his healthcare needs, but also cooking, cleaning, and in some cases, the need for companionship. Let's look at some numbers. At the end of May 2020, 40 million people had filed for unemployment in the United States. The economy will improve in due course and things will improve. However, there are certain sectors that face structural unemployment. This is what the idea and consideration would need to address. Let us say 100,000 households are interested in spending $60,000 a year on home-based healthcare. That is a $6 billion budget. If we specifically focus on households that offer housing to the caregivers, that takes care of additional expenses of 100,000 families trying to make ends meet. Let us say the marketplace takes a 10% commission for facilitating the matchmaking, verifying backgrounds, etc. That amounts to a $600 million annual revenue opportunity. In addition, training is a revenue opportunity that ought to be considered. Government programs need to finance some of this training. Placement is built into the framework. Thus, for governments, partnering with such private companies is attractive. Perhaps $5,000 per person is reasonable as a training budget. That's another $500 million in one-time revenue opportunity, not recurring revenue, to train 100,000 caregivers. Overall, this is a substantial business opportunity with a tremendous social good value proposition. Multiple large companies can be built. They can be regional. They can be based on specializations. The TAM is large, and this market can absorb several million caregiver families, catering to several million elderly households. It is a unicorn startup idea. It is not winner takes all. Multiple unicorns can be built on this premise. Also, multiple bootstrap companies can be built. If you want to work on this idea and are looking for mentoring, come to 1 million by 1 million and we will help you. So that's the second idea that I wanted to discuss today. I'm going to switch a little bit to some a little bit more different questions. We will pick up. Every session, I will try to do 1 or 2 startup ideas because it seems like that's something that's very much on your mind, and I'm happy to dialogue about new startup ideas that are surfacing in the post-COVID world. The question I'm going to take next is, do you know of any great examples of highly profitable social enterprise? The example that I'm going to point you to is Roberto Milk, CEO of Novica. Novica is a wonderful high-impact social enterprise that has been built over 20 plus years. Note, not all high-impact businesses need to go from 0 to 100 million in 5 to 7 years. This company went from 0 to 20 million in 20 years. So it's a very high impact, actually 30 million in 20 years. It's a very high impact social enterprise that caters to artisans around the world and helps them sell their merchandise to consumers all over the world. You can find the case study of this company on our blog. Go to 1mby1m.com, then go to the blog, and then go to Entrepreneur Journeys. You will find the case study there. All our case studies, by the way, are available for free in the Entrepreneur Journeys section of the blog. You can also search the blog by typing in Novika in the search box. But it's a very interesting case study worth reading. The one thing I will tell you about a company that goes from 0 to 20, 30 million in 20 years, this is not considered a success in the venture capital world. Novika actually raised venture capital to get there. But for the most part, if people get the impression that your company is going to grow at a linear pace and not at an exponential pace, then it is not going to be considered as a venture investment. You're better off bootstrapping companies like this. All right. The next question I'm going to do is, why do the founders of a startup usually get replaced? What should founders learn in order to stay the CEO? Well, I have experienced this. I actually had to give up my CEO job from a company that I founded. So let me offer you 3 points, 3 possible issues that you need to watch for in if you desire, if as a founder you desire to stay on as the CEO. Number 1 is non-performance. If a founder takes investor money and then fails to deliver on the KPIs quarter after quarter, that would be a legitimate reason for getting fired. This was not my issue, but it is an issue that causes a lot of CEO changes in investor-funded companies. The second one is politics and personality. Often, founders accept to bring in a CEO and then there ensues personality clashes. There ensues power struggles and related politics. This is what I experienced, and I have written about it elsewhere. I can read you, share with you what I wrote about my experience. The third point, though, is disagreement on strategy. Founders and boards may not agree on strategy, and that could also lead to a leadership switch. To stay as the CEO, you have to address all 3 points. You have to perform. You have to align your board to the strategy that you want to follow. So you have to bring your board along if you want to stay CEO, and the board has to buy into your strategy. And thirdly, the politics and personality will need to be managed. If you give up the CEO job and want to stay on in the company as, let's say, chief product officer or something along those lines, you will need to be able to handle the politics and personality issues of that transition. So while we're on this subject, I once wrote a piece a long time ago, actually. May 20th, 2014 is when I actually published this piece. It was a series that LinkedIn was doing called If I Were 22. And I wrote this piece called I Was Fired from My Own Company. The story, the piece that I wrote, starts with a poem. The poem is by Rabindranath Tagore, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913. And it goes as follows: where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. This was Tagore's vision for his country, India, poor, backward, oppressed by a few hundred years of British colonization. In these words, however, I've always found great resonance for a beautiful personal vision that is both contemporary and timeless. It was true in 1993 when I graduated from college on a beautiful spring afternoon in New England, eyes full of dreams. It is true today as I navigate my way from Silicon Valley through the mazes of a complex global challenge, eyes full of dreams. It is not always easy to hold your head high. Life throws curveballs at you, tries to beat you down. In 1999, I was fired from one of my own companies. I raised the venture capital from NEA and we brought on a middle-aged, supposedly experienced guy as CEO. I was in my 20s. The guy was incompetent and political. He didn't understand the product and he had no vision. We didn't figure any of these qualities out until he joined, because he was on a charm offensive until then, and I had limited experience making this kind of a hire. We thought he could complement my product skills and vision with superior sales skills. Once he was on board, it started going downhill very quickly and he set out to fire me. I had massive immigration challenges and very little negotiating power because I didn't have a green card yet. Long story short, I was in Buenos Aires when he called a board meeting over the phone and fired me. The board let him. I walked around on the streets of Buenos Aires alone, trying to absorb the blow. For a week, I danced 12 hours a day, my way of trying to hold my head high. 6 months later, they had to fire the idiot. The angel investors offered to fund me again and start another company. Life went on. I did start another company. Life went on. Life always goes on. In 2010, I started 1 Million by 1 Million, currently the only global virtual accelerator in the world. Headquartered in Silicon Valley, its mission is to help 1 million entrepreneurs reach $1 million and beyond in annual revenue, thereby creating $1 trillion in global GDP and 10 million jobs. At 16, long before that spring afternoon in New England, I had decided that I was going to be an entrepreneur and work on something consequential. There have been many ups and downs since, but I have tried to stay true to that vision. I hope that you too will develop a vision for your life, pursue it with grit, resilience, and work ethic. And as life deals you the inevitable blows, continue to hold your head high. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. Upon being released, he dismantled apartheid in South Africa and without bitterness took the reins of his country, leading it towards becoming the kind of nation that Tagore had envisioned for his country. In prison, Mandela sustained himself with this poem by William Ernest Henley. It's called Invictus. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I will end today's session on that note. You're all facing hardship. The world is facing hardship. We are all facing hardship. So it is a good moment to remember these powerful words. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Be safe, stay well. I'll see you next time.